right, guys. How are you? This is Motor Racing Podcast. Don, how are you doing?
Good evening, sir. It's good to be back on with you. I know we missed each other a few times this week, but man, I bet we got some stuff to cover today.
Man, it's been hectic. Not just in the race. I mean, just in our own lives, but the racing world too.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Sure.
Before we get started, I literally just got a notification. Richard Childress has fielded another car, the number 33 car for Sonoma. And they will put supercar champion driver Will Brown behind the wheel for Sonoma.
Mr. Will Brown. Okay.
Um, I guess they're going to give somebody else a chance. And maybe that leaves us to talk about SVG first. The All Star race. Um, Trackhouse and RCR not wanting to field a third car for SVG for the All Star race. Why do we feel that they're going to field? Obviously, RCR just fielded another car.
Right.
So what's the issue with Shane Van Gisbergen?
Would it be a far stretch to think that NASCAR could be building storylines for this SVG thing and they're going to surprise him with a Chevrolet the week of the All Star race? Is that too far fetched to assume? Because I
No,
don't
to big. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't see how you don't have Shane Van Gisbergen in your NASCAR Cup Series All Star race. The guy is a fan magnet. He's so great with everyone. He loves what he's doing. He's having a blast every single week. And the guy can drive. We don't even cover his drive. The guy can race, man. Like let's give credit where it's due. I think Chevy and them boys over at NASCAR might be hiding something just a little bit, just to, have some big blow up headlines there the week of the All Star race.
Well, and maybe to elaborate on that, to add, look at he could have easily stepped in for Kyle Larson to do practice and qualifying for the All Star race, but they put Kevin Harvick in there. So
Right.
maybe that's adding in. Maybe NASCAR's hiding something, and who knows? SVG might know already, and they're just playing into the media for the fans. He
Right.
might know that he's got a ride already.
Now, do you
Um,
elaborate on the whole writing for Hendrick? Is that because you don't want a up and coming powerhouse Trackhouse having any kind of inside information to the Hendrick camp? Even though it is All Star Weekend, they're still going to be talking about stuff that they wouldn't normally talk about between teams. So that's why they didn't put SVG in that car and opted for Kevin Harvick.
and I didn't think about that because SVG does have what 2 or 3 Cup starts planned for this year, and I think he's already run. He ran Talladega, and I think he's ran Coda. What was the other one that he ran?
He just ran either
I believe it was Dega.
Dega, right? So maybe
I know he's set for the Chicago Street Course.
right.
And it wouldn't surprise me if he knocked out another win there.
Absolutely. There's no reason he shouldn't go back to back. The guy outdrove everybody on a wet rain course. Like he
His
that's
first time in a Cup car. There
right.
was
That
hardly any practice.
yep.
Qualifying didn't much go good for Trackhouse that weekend.
I don't see
So
how I don't see how NASCAR doesn't have him in the All-Star race to
are
give
they
him.
worried about having outsiders coming into the sport?
Why would you? Why wouldn't you want your sport to have more global recognition? That seems like you'd
I mean,
be
could you imagine? Look at Travis Pastrana. I'm not saying he's on a completely different conversation when it comes to motorsports because he's normally professionally he rides the two-wheeled things. Now
right.
I know he does a lot. He did a lot with Ken Block and Nitro Circus and all that stuff. But what would happen when you got Kimi Räikkönen? Man, he came over to NASCAR last year. Kimi, he's a hell of a driver.
And Kimmy draws a crowd too. I was at the Coda race in March of 2023, and man, I cannot tell you. It was probably more than Ross and Daniel Suarez. The amount of Kimmy shirts I saw with the 91 across the chest. It's crazy how much attention these guys are bringing to the sport, and I don't know why NASCAR wouldn't jump on every opportunity too. You're not
I
you're
mean,
only talking about a fan base, but you're talking about sponsorship too. That's important.
for sure. And I mean, Formula One doesn't have a lot of sponsorship. I mean, you get those guys. Supercar, where SVG came from, that's full of sponsorship. Those
Right.
cars, minus the headlights, they've got stickers from front bumper to rear bumper.
Right. They remind me of the
Um,
Dodgers
and
where they're just covered in ads.
and obviously, coming to the Xfinity Series, he had no issue signing a full-time ride with pretty much a full-time sponsor. I think WeatherTech is on his Xfinity ride for 26 races, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Xfinity only runs 32.
Yep.
So 6 races that he didn't have a sponsor per se.
Right.
Now they were covered, but anyway, all right, going on to Kansas this weekend. And I know there's a lot to talk about across all 3 series, especially Cup. No, we don't have Xfinity this weekend. We won't have a full Kansas weekend until I think it's October.
Oh, wow.
Is when Kansas. Yeah, I think when Kansas comes back around, then we'll have trucks, Xfinity and Cup. Man, expecting speed when we're talking about Kansas with these new cars, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, and the whole 2311 camp. You definitely those 4 drivers you can't keep out.
Right.
2311 has won. So what? Tyler Reddick won there. It wasn't this past fall, was it?
Yeah. He won fall to get into the round of 8. That was his ticket to the round of
8. Or the round of 12. Okay, yeah. So I remember.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So because he won the money line was the car that he won in, wasn't it?
Correct.
Okay, so you had 2311, and I believe Denny Hamlin won the last spring race.
Correct.
And before that, you had 2311, Bubba Wallace in the 45 car.
Correct. Who
won. So you have, if I wasn't mistaken, before that it was Denny Hamlin that won the fall race in the last car. 2022, what was it?
It was Kurt Busch that won in the 45 Jordan car.
That's right. So I mean, either way, so the last 4 or 5 Kansas races, right there, you have Toyota drivers all the way across the board in victory lane.
Right.
Do we see that again this weekend?
Absolutely. I would, if I was putting money on the table in front of us, I'm going Toyota all day. I know Kyle Larson shows an insane amount of speed at this racetrack. But I just don't see how one Chevy can overpower 4, 5, 6 Toyotas. You got to mention Martin Truex Jr. too. I mean, these guys, all these Toyota boys, man, they're fast, and Kansas is their bread and butter. So,
and man, the last time we were here, Christopher Bell had a fast car too.
Right, and I think he got caught up in somebody else's mess, didn't he?
Yeah, a JGR and 2311 as a whole, I expect to see them running up front. Maybe not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but
top 10.
All 6 of those Toyotas in the top 10, if not the top 12.
12, yeah. And we haven't even said it. Ty Gibbs, the kid is fast, and he's determined. He's on a mission right now.
Honestly, if Toyota wins a race this week, if I got to pick anybody to win a race this weekend, just because of how consistent Ty Gibbs has been, the speed that they've shown, I say Ty Gibbs, because Toyota's got something figured out with these next-gen cars at Kansas. Right. Whatever it is, I wouldn't put it past Ty Gibbs to put it in victory lane this weekend.
Absolutely. If he gets a couple timely pit stops and his pit crew gets him a couple more positions, look for that car, that 54 car, to probably end up in victory lane, because it's only a matter of time. Now we just got to pick and choose which track we think he's going to do it at. So if it's the win.
I mean, if you look back at this week at Dover, he didn't really have the pit stops. Really weren't on the money this weekend for Ty Gibbs. So many problems with the car, but the racetrack you're at, Dover, when you got cars on the track, you have nothing but problems anyways. Right. Whether it's inside the car, with the car, or a group of cars.
Right.
Dover's always got that mess, and Kansas is one of those self-cleaning racetracks too. If you're not careful, that racetrack will clean you up into the wall.
Yep.
One of the other guys, man, that I cannot leave out of this conversation, and I'm gonna say 2 guys as a whole, is RFK Racing.
Brad and Chris, absolutely.
Brad has had he hasn't put in victory lane yet, but the last couple Kansas races, they've run the top 5. Right. They've had a fast car. Chris Buescher, the last time we were here, figured something out up against the wall. Couldn't get it up front enough, had some pit stop troubles. Ford could overthrow Toyota this weekend.
I wouldn't be surprised. And to elaborate on the couple Fords that you mentioned with Brad and Chris Buescher, Ryan Blaney. there's he's gonna break through, man. We're talking about the reigning defending Cup Series champion. He's not gonna not win like the entire season. He's gonna get up there.
Well, what about his teammate? If we're talking about Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano has been really good, whether it was with this car or the last car. Joey Logano, Kansas has been now 2015, Matt Kenseth. I mean, Kansas is Joe. That's one of Joey's playgrounds.
Yeah.
I would expect not much Austin Cindric. Last weekend with Cindric kind of surprised me with the speed they held in the week before that. But they've got to be able to keep that going.
I think when it comes to Austin Cindric, and this isn't a knock on his talent level, I don't believe it's as high as his teammates and a lot of the other Ford camps, really across the board. And I'm only going off of stats. So as far as Austin goes, I wouldn't expect to see much out of him. Ford and those boys, they put out a good race car, and I could see him in the top 15 if he keeps his car clean, keeps the nose out of trouble. He could end up in the top 15. I wouldn't be surprised to see Austin make a run there at the end of Kansas.
That, and with the Fords bringing speed, the other guy that I got to come up and mention, Harrison Burton, in that Wood Brothers 21 car. We've seen him, especially at the plate tracks, have fast speed, and Harrison's one of these ones that's always quiet on the racetrack. We don't hear a lot about Harrison Burton unless he's caught up in a wreck.
Right.
But Harrison, man, if watching him come from the back, they don't hardly ever talk about him on TV. Harrison's a patient driver. Right. I'm not knocking on Cindric's talent, but right now I think Harrison Burton and Austin Cindric, I feel may need to swap rides. If we want to see that 2 in victory lane, I think Harrison's got the drive and more or less the patience to be able to handle that, where Austin's just pedal to the metal, foot down. I don't give a shit what. Pretty much Andy J. I'm not going to lift until I see a God or the checkered flag.
Right.
I mean, and having that mentality as a race car driver is awesome because, if you ain't first, you're last, and, you're trying to get across that take that checkered. But
what do you do on the track?
Yeah, but Harrison is one of these kids. He is definitely, for a Burton, he is very quiet for a Burton.
True. They've been known to have quite the personalities over the years.
Jeff and Ward, man, if they weren't happy, the whole damn garage knew about it.
The garage, the stands, the fans outside the garage. Yeah, it wasn't a secret.
No, and the fact that Harrison, and as young as he is in the Cup Series, new blood. So what we're talking about, this is his 3rd year in the Cup Series.
Yeah, he joined after Matty DiBenedetto lost his ride in 2021. Harrison joined with the next gen car, so that was basically his refresh. He's in his 3rd season.
Now, talking about not necessarily Dover, but I noticed this past weekend at Dover. I know with these new low-profile tires that we have issues. I can't remember who it was. Somebody went 4 or 5 laps down because they had to be towed back to the pits because all 4 tires were down. Do we feel like maybe NASCAR needs to make a change to that policy? I mean, because that driver has no control. If there's no damage and he's still able to fire it up and drive it back to the garage, the tires really aren't the driver's fault.
Correct.
With the old tire, we had that run flat that was in there, and they could run on a flat tire back to the pits. Now they get beached and grounded. So
what was interesting about that Never Flat was the carcass from the outer tire did so much catastrophic damage to the well, and we've seen windows ripped out of the sides of those cars because of that carcass slapping, and then drivers were talking about some of it was actually hitting them inside the car. And so I think that's why NASCAR leaned away from that method for a while. Did it help the car get around? Yeah, but at what cost? It was just tearing it up. So are they okay with the car running flat and having to tow it back so that it saves the car? Is that kind of the angle they took with this? Because it seems like we're getting a lot more cleaner race cars at the end of races, and we don't see as many tires destroying the actual race car throughout the race.
And to me, NASCAR, I like that aspect because, you get a flat, and it's like Kyle Busch, his him getting turned around and him liking to drive backwards.
Right.
We saw it at Bristol, at Charlotte, to try to keep it from tearing up the car. But at what point does NASCAR say, okay, this might be a little ridiculous. This guy's been beached for 7 laps and we're still waiting on a tow truck. That's not that driver's fault. I feel like NASCAR should implement a policy that if you get beached, that, you know, they either give you a lap back or give you the lucky dog, or they even red flag it until they can get you towed and going.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really, really interesting thing because it's a very easy thing for them to red flag it, run a couple commercials, which they're going to do anyway, and get this guy back in the pits, get him some fresh tires. That way he's not losing spots on the track. I think that's completely fair. And if anybody from NASCAR has any kind of say and they're listening, you know, throw that little seed out there. Maybe we can get something rolling with it, because these drivers going 5 and 6 laps down and ruining their day, it's so pointless for something that's out of their control. And it really will wear on a driver's mental aspect when they don't even have the control to finish their race correctly for something that they had really nothing to do with, whether they got spun out and all 4 went flat or whatever. There's so many different ways NASCAR can handle that, where it helps, where it makes it driver friendly, and where their fans aren't disappointed too.
See, it's kind of like the Christopher Bell thing, you know, during qualifying. You can see he's got 2 rear flats.
Right.
Granted, the front's still up, but what happens if that's a race and he gets beached going into the pits?
Right.
I mean,
and then how many laps did he lose? He lost like what, two or 3 laps?
Yeah. So I mean, NASCAR, I think, needs to do something other than that, because, like I said, you know, you have good race cars out here. I'm sure their races could have been determined differently if NASCAR had done something about a beached race car.
Right.
Um,
one of those things where it's not happening often enough to where they don't feel they have to make an adjustment on it? Or is it just one of those bad luck of the draws, kind of the same way if you get a piece of debris and your car overheats on you type?
And I'm not like, we have 38 races a year.
Right.
2 of them, which are non-point paying, the All-Star and the Clash.
Correct.
We're not seeing beached race cars every week. But what happens when you have that week, like Talladega and Daytona? What happens when it rains? We know the grass out there is very thick, and with these race cars being lower, with the everything being underneath them, it's instantly a beached race car.
Right.
And as these guys are going, they're losing laps. Like Joey Logano at the 2022 Daytona 500, he had a couple flat tires, but he was also in the grass, got beached, and lost 2 laps.
Yeah. Because it's
so to me,
the tow trucks just to get him back in a position to get back going again.
Yeah, and I'm like, he was good running at, you know, the front of the field in the top 10.
And the race was taken away from him.
Yeah, because of this stupid thing. And he had a car to win that race. Granted, going to those tracks, anybody can win the race.
Right.
That's it. It's a gamble. Talladega, Daytona, and Atlanta are gambles. It's anybody's race. But if you take that aspect going into Kansas, a racetrack like Kansas, a 1.5 mile track, where it takes not as long to get around the racetrack, you're going to lose more laps. Kansas, you can get beached because of the front stretch being angled and flattened off like it is. We've seen that in the past.
Yep.
I don't know what NASCAR needs to do about this issue. Like you said, we may not see it enough to where NASCAR feels like it's an issue, but when it does happen, what happens? We have that race. We have 4 or 5 cars like that. That's 4 or 5, you know, drivers that could have had a win or a better day if it hadn't been. They don't have any control of this. NASCAR designed this car.
Right.
And I feel like NASCAR tried to implement everything that they could as far as trying to make it better.
Right.
And some things I feel like, oh, light bulb, this would make this better, but they didn't turn to think about the bad stuff that could come from it, like the consequences. They were like, okay, let's go to these low profile tires. We can make them wider, more grip, better racing, you know, more speed through the corners, but really didn't think about the overall, hey, what happens when these go flat and the cars can't fucking get nowhere? Because you got 3,600 pound race cars on 20 or on 18-inch low profile tires.
Would it be fair to say that maybe NASCAR did think of these things and still made some of the decisions they made in order to get this next gen product on the racetrack? Because the sooner they get the product on the racetrack, the sooner they get it's never ending information back in ways to
Every
adjust.
race, yeah.
So they're not just, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're just sitting around doing nothing. They're like, the cars are high centering in the grass or beached, as we're calling it. I think they're taking all the information they can. And if they are able to make adjustments, they can, unless they're really just aiming at another redesign. But we're still talking about generations of race cars. These things usually go 5 to 10 years a generation. And so, we're in the middle of year 3 of this thing. I personally still enjoy a lot of the aspects of the racing, and yeah, there are a bunch of things that have taken my favorite driver out that has ruined my Sunday afternoon for a little bit, and then I get over it. But it's one of those racing things. My guy got a flat tire, and he like you were talking about, he ended up 2 laps down. But as a whole, I enjoy the racing as a whole. Maybe that's something else NASCAR takes into consideration. Is if fans are still able to enjoy the race. I know there's got to be fans like me that even though Tyler Reddick or Bubba or Ross wrecks out early in the race, I'm still watching until the checkered flag flies and the celebration is over, just because I love the product of racing. So
yeah, I love the sport. I love, because anything can happen right there in that last corner.
Right.
Exactly. Just a couple years ago, and Kyle Busch wins Kansas. Right. Kyle was running 11th or 12th all weekend, or in all race. Then that last restart comes out. They have that big pileup between Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney right there on the outside, and that gives Kyle Busch enough right through 3, right down halfway down the backstretch through 3 and 4 to be able to get that lead. And the only person, now if he'd had another lap, I believe Kevin Harvick probably would have caught him.
Maybe.
But we'll never know. And then Kyle Busch goes on to win the Bushy McBush Beans race,
right,
at Kansas, man. And it's not even just a manufacturer. How do we expect with we're supposed to have nice weather for Kansas this weekend, awesome racing weather, Cup cars. This new car has allowed, especially at these racetracks, we saw it at Dover last week, open up the racing lines. Instead of there being a bottom, middle, and top, you really can't label a racing line anymore, because every time we go to a racetrack, the line changes. I mean, you always have the preferred line, but to me, even just through we're 11 or 12 races through the season now,
I think we're number 13 is this week.
Compared to, if you look back at the race, wherever they've raced this year, if you look back at the previous race, the racing line has never been the same with this car. They were all riding either the middle, and then once it rubbered up this past weekend, they were riding the top, and then that little bit of white that they could find right there at the bottom of the racetrack, everybody started maneuvering back down there.
Right.
Kansas this week, I feel like NASCAR has made an awesome decision these last couple races not to put a resin or a PJ1 down. And then we're going to bring that up too with the tires for Dover. We saw the same thing like we did at Bristol. No rubber laid down, but it's fucking cold.
Right.
So to me right there, I would be 95% certain that the temperature outside affecting the temperature of the racetrack is what allowed the rubber to just build up in chunks and be tossed rather than laid down on the racetrack.
Right. And Goodyear, you got to hand it to them. They're adjusting with us fans week to week. They're doing the best they can with the information they have. I think Bristol might have been an anomaly as far as tires go. I think
that was a freak accident with a new compound.
I think they missed one of the ingredients in the tire when they were making the molds, and it just completely wrecked the whole weekend. Something just didn't add up about that, right? And then for some reason, Denny and Martin are like, "Hey, we're old savvy vets. We got this. We can deal with messed up tires."
I mean, but to me, excuse me. I mean, look at Christopher Bell right before he turned in qualifying. We saw right there as he went to go enter 3 and 4, that big chunk of rubber that just kicked out from the front right.
Right. He ran
And
over
then
that giant piece, right?
yep, ran over that giant piece, and I think it was a mix, but maybe between the bumps and running over that big chunk of rubber. I think running over that big chunk of rubber with the right rear, I think that's what sent the car around. I think that's what unbalanced the car when he went over the humps. He didn't have the rear in the racetrack,
Makes
and
sense.
that's where it went around.
Absolutely. There's no way to argue that or refute that because the guy was running just fine of a lap until he got to that turn and then all he lost all of it. Now, I don't even think he needed a backup, right? He just scuffed the wall and they rewrapped it on the back end.
Yep, they fixed it up, sanded it down, did all that stuff. I actually watched a picture. They had that car fixed in 20 minutes.
They had it fixed in 20 minutes.
Yep, they had the rear end there where he hit the wall. They had it fixed and rewrapped in 20 minutes.
Wow, that's not bad. I mean, we're talking about efficiency and these guys being able to reuse a lot of these race cars. It's kind of cool that they were able to do that. I mean, he didn't take a hard hit, so we're not over hyping this repair, but it still wasn't a light hit, right? You're doing 160 around these turns and back into a wall. So
I mean, Christopher Bell, dirt background, the way that he handled and drove that car, the way it came around, I expected nothing less from the driver that Christopher Bell is.
absolutely, hats off to that saving that race car. And we've seen that from a few drivers over the year. Not to discredit Chris, but over the years, these dirt guys and the way they're able to catch these race cars mid spin and really drift it most of the way through the turn because they're on and off the throttle, balancing that car and making sure it doesn't go too far one way. And another aspect we haven't talked about is the overcorrecting, especially with these next gen cars. Man, these next gen cars, you overcorrect just slightly, and the bite that the front of the car gets in this asphalt,
It's
man,
almost like it's not even a gradual bite. It's an instant, almost hard right.
it's a jerk, and the physics almost don't even. It doesn't even make sense. I think we saw Kaz Grala take that hit at Dover when he wrecked in practice or qualifying. I mean, the
It's like
car,
the way that these cars bite. It's like a toddler grabs it by the top and just goes and shoves it right in the wall. That's
right,
the way that the best way I could describe it. And
right.
and
So how do we figure out where, as a from a fan's perspective, how do we figure out what we want, and then is Goodyear would Goodyear even take that into consideration? Or are they just so focused on next week and they've got to have stuff planned out for months,
we'll
right?
see. And I don't feel like I feel like NASCAR and Goodyear don't really necessarily listen to the fans as much as they should.
Or could.
Or yeah, um, to me, I think they're making big progress between Bristol and this past weekend at Dover. I believe Goodyear, not NASCAR, Goodyear has made optimal improvement
Right.
on the tire compound because Bristol was a total just clusterfuck.
That was crazy. There was nothing
Um,
that was something that I can't even actually place blame on anything other than freak accident, right? Like it was just so weird.
New compound, and if I'm not mistaken, I actually went back and read after that. And we talked about it. The compound that they tested with the closed testing session at Bristol back in February, I believe it was, or January,
Right.
was the same compound that they brought to the racetrack that Sunday. So
But the
they must
weather,
have had a pretty decent warm day when they were testing
okay.
that, and they may not have had a resin put down.
Right.
Um, but shout out to Goodyear, awesome bringing the tire. We thought we were going to have another mess because the way that qualifying and practice went. But with the weather changed, the drivers adapted, everybody adapted, and the compound that they brought to Dover, the fall off and the rubber build that they had from top to bottom, there wasn't really a lick of white racetrack in those corners once they were done with those 400 laps. But the fact that they were able to stretch a Goodyear tire 60 laps, the same tire they brought to Bristol that was only lasting 25, they were able to stretch to 60.
Yeah.
Before they started courting.
Right. They could go a little bit past that, but some of the drivers obviously.
I think Larry Mack said 72 laps would be pushing it.
Right.
For that tire compound, but for the same type of racetrack, abrasiveness, what we saw between qualifying and practice to race day, and the product we got, I couldn't be any happier than what Goodyear did this weekend.
I was very,
especially with the same compound that not just a couple of weeks ago we had a complete and utter mess with.
Right.
It's like Goodyear took a pot of sauce that we were so excited about and took it to Bristol and spilt it all over the fucking racetrack.
It was
And
almost like
brought the and
a
then soaked it
splat for
all
to get
back
rid of
up.
dirt.
Yeah. And then soaked it all back up, put it back in the pan, brought it to Dover, and served it to people, and people actually liked it. So it's like they took a shit product and turned it into something good this weekend.
Do you think that I'm not one for conspiracies, but the fact that it was supposed to be the Bristol dirt race and fans were in such an uproar over all that for those few years that they did it, that the first spring race back, Goodyear was like, let's just give them a trash tire just to say F you. I mean, they have the ability.
They're like, you know what? We're tired of you people fucking bitching. Here's a shit ass tire.
Right.
Well, it's not even done testing. Here's a shit ass fucking tire.
Right.
Man, and besides Cup, let's talk truck. We got those guys racing this weekend too. Toyota being dominant. I know the one driver, and I know, read it all over your face, one driver you got in mind is Corey Heim.
Yes, sir.
When we say Toyota and mention the Craftsman Truck Series, that is even just mentioning Truck Series, that is the one name right now that is coming all the way up. Corey Heim is making a name for himself. And to mention Corey Heim, he will also be back in the car for Eric Jones this weekend. Right. Eric Jones has been cleared to race, but they're going to give him another week. So I believe he's going to be back at Darlington.
Which I think is a good move by that team to keep Eric safe. There's no need to rush him back. We're really a third of the way through the season. Give him an extra week. Let him get right. I can't imagine anything about being in a race car being comfortable on your back right now. So yeah, that's a great call by them. Give him another week. Give Corey Heim some more time behind the wheel of this next gen car, because boys, buckle up. That kid is coming.
Hey, Eric Jones, man, and for you Eric Jones fans out there listening, let every driver here in the last couple years, besides Ryan Newman, that has gotten in an accident and come back, has showed why they belong in the sport.
Right.
Look at Kyle Busch, 2015. Granted, a lot of people put an asterisk next to Kyle's 2015 championship, and I don't know why they do. To me, missing the first 11 races of the season and then coming back, earning a spot in the chase, and then winning a Cup title that year, to me, that's not bullshit. That's impressive.
I have to add to it. All the other drivers had 11 other races to gain points and everything that's needed going into the playoffs. Kyle didn't get any kind of advantage. He did anything else any other driver would have had to do.
Had to have points and that win.
Have at least one win, get your spot in the playoffs, and then have enough points to advance in the process. Like, what are we talking about? He beat y'all with less races. Like,
and we had 4 wins going into the playoffs.
Bro, why didn't y'all beat him in those 4 wins? I don't understand. Like, what are we complaining about? You know? It's just a cry about it, you know?
Yeah. If you guys don't like that kind of racing, don't even watch.
Don't watch. Yeah.
You know,
sorry to get emotional. I usually keep keep a level, but man, this complaining about stuff is getting silly. And I know we're talking about 9 years ago in Kyle Busch's championship, but it's when you want the fan base to enjoy what they're experiencing, and then half the time all you get is people griping about it. It gets exhausting, you know?
And me not being the biggest, you know, and Bubba's still growing back on me.
Right.
Every week I'm like, you know, where's Bubba running? Where's Bubba running? I'm still fighting because Kyle Busch has got a couple years still left in him. I say he just turned 39 yesterday. So shout out. Happy birthday, Kyle.
39 on the 3rd or the 2nd?
The 2nd.
Okay.
So, you know, we might still have another 6 or 7 seasons left in us. I know the plan, he said, was to race until Brexton was 14.
Okay.
When Brexton turned 14, Kyle was going to run a full-time Truck Series schedule for the first year to see if he could be the first person to win a championship in each series. And after that full time, if he doesn't, whether he does or doesn't, he said the next year that truck will be shared with Brexton. He can run the shorter tracks while Kyle runs the bigger ones. And then when Brexton turns 18, that's it.
And you know what's interesting is if Kyle Busch has a plan, look for all of that to go according to plan, unless something major happens, which we're not even gonna. We'll just knock on wood on that one.
Yeah, we already went through that 2015 shit. Shut up.
Right, exactly. So don't wish that on anybody. But yeah, I don't see why that's not going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Busch is one of the front runners to win the Truck Series championship when he decides to do that. And also, a family does play into it. Maybe Brexton advances quicker than they had imagined, and Kyle takes a step back quicker and decides he doesn't want to do the Truck Series. You just never know.
I mean, following Samantha on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, she's constantly posting. And Brexton right now running Bandoleros. He's killing it out there, man. Right. I'm not that far from Millbridge Speedway. The next time he's racing down there here in about a week or so, we're gonna make our way down there.
And make sure the kiddos get that kid's autograph, because that's going to be a cool moment for them to grow up with as the years go on. If y'all have a chance to meet Brexton and
I know the last time I met Kyle, it was Q&A, and somebody had asked him if him and Brexton had got to sign autographs together yet. And Kyle said they had, and he said that, he never thought that would be a sentimental moment for him because it's just a signing of something. Right. But he said first autograph that him and Brexton ever signed together, he looked down at Brexton, who signed that, and then handed it back up to him, and he signed it. So they signed it together, and he didn't think it was going to be something sentimental, but Kyle said that really meant a lot to him.
That's got to be such a surreal moment when you're young man that you're raising up, whether it be whether you're raising sons or daughters, but in this case Brexton, to sign an autograph for a wanting fan, obviously, and you get dad and son on the same piece. I had to imagine a lot of people that followed Dale and Dale Jr. back in the late 90s when that started that build up with those two and getting their autographs together probably had a lot of a sentimental value to Dale. And you know what, we might have to post that question to Dale Jr. about the first time he signed an autograph with his dad and see what kind of
yeah. I know a buddy of mine had gotten a hold of something at Daytona. It was the Coca-Cola pair cars, the junior and senior cars, and right. Of course one was signed by junior and the other one was signed by senior. It was a pair, and he won it in a raffle. Spent $100. Nice. Won it in a raffle, and I'm like, man, those are pieces to have. Like, don't let those go, especially something signed by senior.
Right.
Anyway, going back to trucks, man. Corey Heim.
Oh, we went way off trucks.
We did. Hey, but Corey Heim time, man. Every race we go to, it doesn't matter what fucking track we go to, Corey Heim is always somebody that you have to put in your list to watch.
Yep.
If you don't, you're always going to get slapped in the back of the head because here comes Corey Heim out of nowhere.
Right.
He could have a wrecked race truck and end up coming back and finishing the top 5. That kid's just got stupid driving skill.
Yeah, and if you haven't been paying attention and you're surprised by this, I don't know where you've been, because this kid is incredible to watch on the racetrack. And not only him on the racetrack, but his team as a whole. His pit stops are always really good. His crew chief is always on point with everything they're running. Just as a whole team, that truck is fast. That team is great, and they're probably going to make a deep run into this year's playoffs.
And just it shows Corey Heim how good he had the 3 truck starts he had last year for Kyle Busch Motorsports, driving the 51. 3 wins and 3 starts.
Yeah, that's them Casey Kane numbers. I think Casey was 5 out of 6 with his wins.
And I mean, then he gets his own truck ride, and now he's not even a year into his first full-time truck series, and he's called up to Cup.
Yep.
Hey, buddy, we need you to come. Eric's hurt. We need you to come and drive the car for us. Imagine and to me, that says a lot about Corey, not just as a driver, but as a person, because you have to be focused, you have to be determined, and you have to be, right there, right then in the moment when you're in those Cup cars. Because if not, you'll turn right when you should have turned left. I hate to say it like that, but and Corey Heim going to Legacy Motorsports had a good finish at Dover. And I'm looking forward to seeing Corey in the 40 back in the 43 this weekend,
Yeah.
ripping that top line like he's always doing.
And it'll be fun to see because him getting the opportunity, these young kids, man, they get this kind of opportunity. They want to show out, right? They want to show, hey, I can do this with all these champions, all these guys that have won races. Watch me work. And he's got decent equipment. I mean, the Legacy's not a slouch equipment. So,
No.
It's no surprise that he did well. And I wouldn't be surprised with this intermediate track. Kansas isn't really a technically difficult track. I think it's right up Corey Heim's wheelhouse as far as just getting around these turns and almost borderline sliding through them, with the way that how big these turns are at Kansas. It'll be really interesting to see. Maybe fair to say top 15 with Eric's car this week.
Yeah, I mean, Eric's had some speed in that car, and they had some speed last week here at Dover. It wasn't surprising to see Corey Heim go out there and start ripping fast lap times in that 43. Wasn't surprising, not really expected, but not surprised.
Right.
And then guys that we haven't mentioned, Ben Rhodes. He is on a strip of races that have just been trouble. Nothing but trouble. I mean, all the way across the board for ThorSport, minus Ty Majeski.
Right.
Ty Majeski, man, they gave him a ride, and he said, you know what? Fuck y'all, I'm going to win races. And I would not expect anything less out of Ty Majeski to be one of those ones that with a possibility of winning this race.
Yeah.
Now, would I put Ben Rhodes and Matt Crafton in that conversation? Probably not. Matt Crafton, I feel like he's pulling a Jimmy Johnson and like he's losing his edge, and it's almost probably about time. Crafton, four truck championships, man, an ass full of wins. No disrespect to that man. That man's a veteran and he's a hell of a driver. But when it's time, I think it's getting about that time.
Yeah, and it sucks because I think we've mentioned this on a previous show where it's just hard for a driver to hang him up, right? You don't want to take your gloves off for the last time. You don't want to unzip your race suit for the last time. It's not an easy feeling. You don't want to walk out of your race shop for the last time. It's not easy, especially for the motorsports racer. And when it sucks that some drivers let it get to a point where, and we saw Jimmy Johnson go through it, where he was just miserable those last couple of years, and
ran off that last win at Dover in 2017, and then he retired in 2020.
2020, I believe, was his last year. Had a chance.
So
to win.
I mean,
I can't remember what race it was. He had a chance to win one of those races, and
the Roval.
No, it wasn't a Roval. It wasn't the Roval, but
that was when he had the win. It's when he went into the last chicane at the Roval, trying to chase Martin Truex Jr. down, spun and took out Truex and giving Blaney the win that year.
Right, there was that one, and then he also had one where they came off of two, and I can't remember the racetrack, and some of our listeners might know what I'm talking about, but he ran into the back of a lap car. I guess he got tight coming out of the turn and touched the back of a lap car and turned him straight into the inside wall, and he wrecked out right there. He was leading that race and probably going to go win it.
I know he was. He had an opportunity to win at Texas in some of his last races. I can't remember which one it was, but I know there was one he qualified well, practiced well, had speed, and just there was something that happened out of his control that just ended his day. So I hate seeing those guys like that. Ben Rhodes, man, 2-time truck championship and twice as young as Matt Crafton.
Yep.
Coming off, he just won his second championship in a row, and this season for him has been nothing but shit.
Yeah. And it's really going to be about how they respond to these bad starts, because normally they're pretty consistent throughout the start of these seasons, and it helps kind of launch them into a rhythm for the playoffs. Whereas they're not getting that same luxury, and they're having to, claw, scratch, fight, and everything they can for every last point they can get right now. Do you think it just comes down to rattling off a win and just getting your spot? One of those, just hope for a win somewhere?
I feel like you came off. I feel like the problem is with the young kids like that. And I'm not necessarily saying this is the problem, but this is what I think. Ben Rhodes comes off a second in a row championship.
Right.
The off season was obviously, there was some work involved, but I feel like a lot of the off season was used to celebrate, put high expectancies out there at the beginning of the season, and put themselves in shoes with goals that were here to start the season when the goal should have been, right about here. I'm not saying set low goals,
basically.
but to me, I think he went into the beginning of the season because, well, we just won a big championship. And the first championship he won, they came back, and he won the opener at Daytona. So I think they went in thinking that all that stuff was going to happen again, and he's just went through a stream of it. I feel like if Ben just they come to the racetrack, they've got some speed, he takes a deep breath and just focuses on the windshield and getting that race car, that truck out front, I think Ben Rhodes could change up the complexity and the way that their season is going. I'm not a big Ford guy, and everybody fucking knows that. I can't stand Ford. But Ben Rhodes is one of these kids that I'm not going to say I see him in Cup, but he's got the talent to be able to run full-time trucks the way. Look at Allgaier. Justin Allgaier is phenomenal in the Xfinity Series. But the minute he stepped up to Cup, every opportunity he's gotten, right down the damn toilet.
Yeah, so he might be a little too cavalier with his approach to the Cup Series, and where he could actually tone it down a little bit and kind of just race the race. And Allgaier lets it get away from him sometimes. So that's probably why he doesn't have a full-time ride.
And the other person that I'm going to mention, he's a Ford Front Row Motorsports runner, Lane Riggs.
Right.
Kid's got talent. I believe that it's hard to fill the shoes of the last driver that was just in that truck. Zane Smith, man, he did phenomenal things in that truck.
Right.
But Lane Riggs, I met him at RCR Fan Day. He drove part-time for Colleague last year. Couple races. Great kid, great personality, awesome race car driver. Once he gets these trucks figured out, I think it's going to take him a minute. But like I said, you got 32 races to figure it out. However long, I think the Xfinity Series is 32. I think trucks is like 26 or 28. But either way, we're 10 races in. I think we're starting to get things figured out because the last couple of weeks he's had better runs. Right. I would definitely not leave out Lane Riggs. It would not surprise me one bit if Lane rattled off a win this weekend.
Absolutely. And what's tough with Lane and taking over that 38 truck is how successful that 38 truck has actually been. And so
all the eyes that are on that truck and the high expectancies to be coming from that, and it's not showing results just yet.
Right. Whereas he might have stepped into shoes that are still a little bit too big, but he's fully capable of filling and showing a lot of potential.
And then you have Spire Motorsports, man. Raja Karuth would not surprise me one bit if he's running. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if he started on the front row.
If Raja, yes, qualifying well is very important, because if you get caught up in with the squirrels in the back, you're gonna get nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if he qualifies well, I expect him to stay up front. I expect his crew to keep him up front, and he doesn't find himself in a lot of trouble. Purely incidental with some of the stuff that he has been in, but he's getting smarter and he's getting better each week.
Well, and it seems like his teammate Chase Purdy really hasn't improved much since the beginning of the season either.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a driver issue. I'm just gonna he drove for Kyle for a year or two, and didn't do anything in KBM equipment. So, not dragging on the kid, but maybe he doesn't need a truck series ride.
Maybe, and it'll be interesting to see where it turns out here as the season progresses.
The truck series you can't ever take for granted, man, because you have these string of people that will have, like Ty Majeski we've been talking about, Corey Heim. I guarantee we say all these good things this tonight, and then this weekend, everybody's going to have a shit time, and we're going to have that one guy that comes right up out of the smoke that nobody expected to take the checkered.
Yep.
And the truck series is like that every week.
Yep.
I am never disappointed by the truck series.
No, and they're a lot of fun to watch. Those boys get after it, man. I love seeing those trucks go 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 wide. They're going for the win. They're out there to prove, hey, we belong with the best of them. We want to get to Xfinity. We want to get to Cup just like everybody else. And they lay it out there, man. They leave it all out on the track. They show a ton of emotion, a ton of character, and I enjoy it. I don't like I get sad when I miss truck races on either Friday or Saturdays because they're so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and the people that bitch about the Cup guys, the Cup regulars going down into the lower sports, especially the Truck Series. Yeah, all these people are bitch, especially Kyle Busch is that one name that you guys that people throw in there that's like, well, you don't need to be down here taken away from all these kids. Another one of those fans, the group of fans that like to bitch about things like that. And I'm like,
Right.
but when Ryan Preece or Joey Logano or Ryan Blaney or one of those guys comes and runs down a single or a double race, there's not a word. Like, I feel like a certain group of people, of fans, have vendettas against certain drivers.
Yeah, and Kyle Busch, and we'll throw Jenny's name in there too, where he would be getting booed and people would be complaining about it, right? Because that's the persona they bring to the sport. They're the villain. They're the one that wins all the time, so people don't like it, right? And then you got obviously the diehards and the fans that love it, and that's what makes the sport interesting and fun. Um, of course, people are going to say, "Why is Kyle Busch down in the Truck Series? Why is Kyle Busch down in the Xfinity running these races?" But it's not breaking the rules, guys. I don't know what to tell y'all. They get five. I think they get 5 races in the trucks and 5.
Yeah, and the thing with that, I've heard time and time again about the truck regulars and the Xfinity regulars being like, I don't know what these fans are bitching about. Like, we love racing against these guys. What do you think is going to give us our experience when we go up?
Right. Nothing
And
but
if I can
free.
outrace Kyle Busch, 103 wins in the Xfinity Series. We have 96 wins in the Truck Series. What do you, those guys, man, when you're out there racing and you're door to door, look at Corey Heim at Texas.
Yep.
I know Kyle had to have been sweating in his ass eating a seat in that truck driving out of the mirror.
Yep.
When you have a Cup regular and you got one of those guys sweating and driving out of the rear view, you're doing something right.
Right. That's a bigger high than racing some of the guys that you want to race against, and they're now you're on the track with them. So.
And when you beat that guy, when you pass him for the win, that just, I'm not necessarily an ego, but when you get to victory lane and that, Jamie Little asked you that question, how does it feel to beat a guy like Kyle Busch? I mean, that emotion, man, it's like holy shit, I just beat one of the best in the business.
Right.
And to me, I'm like, how do you as a fan look at that and be disgusted instead of excited?
Yeah, it's just it's haters, right? It's the couch racers that are jealous. It has to be. That's I don't know why you wouldn't enjoy that kind of racing. Not only is that driver getting to experience something out of this world, they're getting free experience on top of that. Why would you not want your driver to have that experience against some of the best and getting all the information that he's getting in real time against him? Like, I think it's awesome. I'm glad they limit it to 5 because I think it would get a little out of hand if these guys were racing full time.
Well, the whole reason that there is a 5 race rule is they call it the Kyle Busch rule.
Right, because he was winning so much
that they had to say, okay, hey, that's enough.
Right. And I think that's fair. I think that's good.
And I do too. Enough's enough, especially I can understand when people will be like, well, they're taking stage points away from this person, or they're taking stage wins, or they're doing this and they're doing that. And I'm like, well, why do you think they're not allowed to race when the fucking playoffs start?
Right.
Once the green flag drops on the Xfinity and the Truck Series playoffs, Cup regulars are no longer allowed in. So, and to me, the Cup guys don't get the points. I believe they get the ownership points.
Right.
But they don't get driver's points. They don't get stage points. They'll get nothing. To me, NASCAR needs to, if it happens, award, if example, Kyle Busch wins a stage. That stage point should go to the truck that finished behind Kyle on that stage, or the playoff point.
Basically eliminate the Cup driver's name from the points and then everybody else slides up into place and they get their respective points.
See, and I still think Kyle finished first, and I don't think they should go to second and then start 10, 9, 8, 7. You get the stage points that you get wherever you finish, but I believe they shouldn't take that playoff point away from the driver. I think it needs to go to the driver who finishes behind that Cup driver.
Right. Okay.
To me, that would make it, but not being able to race during the playoffs, to me, that's enough. It's just another one of those just people bitching, like Bubba's always saying.
Right.
And if a lot of these race fans would shut their mouth and listen to what a lot of the drivers have to say, don't go out on social media and Twitter. Watch the interviews with the drivers. Hear what they think. The crew chiefs, the team owners, the people that are in the shop running the fucking sport, not the suits sitting at NASCAR headquarters, not Steve Phillips or whoever the fuck that guy is, not those guys. The race teams. Listen to those guys and you will find out what's going on and what they want for the sport. Because a lot of these drivers right now want the same thing that you guys, that us fans want.
Right.
I mean, what was it like Kyle Larson this past weekend? Because he lost to Denny Hamlin, he wants the rear cameras from the race cars taken out.
Right.
Now, to me,
talking about the mirror driving, because he was the arrow
blocking
is so bad, I guess, in some instances that the drivers are thinking that the advantage is the camera.
So to me, I can be on the fence about it because I'm like, does it add an advantage? To me, I think it does a little, just because you have that much more vision of behind the car rather than this.
Right.
But in Kyle Larson's aspect, what would have happened if Denny Hamlin didn't have that rear camera? It wasn't able to see as much as, that they've been able to see for years with the little ass side view mirrors and a mirror like this.
Right. We're talking about more possibility of not seeing him in his blind spots, and we're ending up wrecking the front two cars, whereas he's got a camera, he can see more behind him.
But to me, without the camera, there's no, maybe Denny still wins the race. Maybe he still air blocks Kyle Larson.
Right.
But that takes a lot of his viewing away from behind the car. And to me, with the 600 and just NASCAR as a fucking whole, it should be man versus car.
Right.
Dexterity and determinability. Like, without that camera, Denny Hamlin, I believe, still has the talent and the wills to carry out and take that checkered flag.
Right.
But what if? There's always that what if. Does he go up to try and clear Larson, not clear, and Larson puts him in the wall, and it's a reverse Kansas type thing?
It's one of those things where all of the drivers have the same advantages. Kyle Larson is not at a disadvantage because Denny Hamlin has a mirror. Denny Hamlin has the advantage because he's in the front of the track. So it's one of those things where if you're really unbiased towards it and you're breaking it down all the way to the core, Kyle Larson and Kyle Larson fans, if you want that advantage that you're talking about, be in front of Denny. Like,
see, Denny, and that's to me the Kyle Larson fans that are like, yeah, get rid of the rear camera. Our driver might have won if he didn't have it.
Right.
But what happens on the other side of that fence when your driver does have it and you have other fans going, well, they should took the camera out of Kyle Larson's car, and all those Kyle Larson fans are like, quit bitching. It's the same thing. It's being hypocritical.
Right.
Like, you guys got to be even across the board, man. And as a race fan, like I said, 2 points of views, who knew without that rear view camera, the automated one, racing could have been a whole lot different.
Right.
But in your point of view, there's no disadvantage.
Right.
The disadvantage is not being out front.
Right. So
and
be out front, and you have what Denny has.
Exactly.
That sounds like a you problem, not a race car problem. Like, that sounds like you as a fan problem.
Now, to me, I believe maybe these close races like Dover, where we have a lot of close racing, maybe not, get rid of the cameras, maybe. And maybe not bring the cameras back unless we're super speedway racing. Super speedway racing, I could see having that big camera because it just,
You're
But then
basically you're going off of runs instead of it being an air block that we were discussing before. So basically, you're blocking lines and runs that drivers are getting, and it's not and it's necessary to see the more of what's coming behind you. Your
exactly.
your spotter has still got to be about a sec. By the time you get the information and make a decision from your spotter's ear, that's still not enough reaction time when you're still looking at your mirrors also. So it's
I
a
believe
big
the automated mirrors have made a huge difference in whether they're being a wreck or not being a wreck, because somebody's been able to see. Like, I've noticed that the last couple super speedways, whoever's out front, if they're blocking, a lot of the times they will slowly try to inch their way up because they're not sure. But
right.
because they can see a little bit more, we don't have those bullshit blocks like Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski like to throw. It's just a blind block and they take out the entire front of the field.
Right.
Super speedway races, let's have the camera. In my opinion, any other race, road course, short track, a mile and a half, get rid of the damn camera.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, especially with it being the super speedways and everybody's being so close together, that would make sense for them to keep the cameras there. Every other track, go to your manual, rear view mirror mirror on the car, and kind of bring back a little bit of that old school style racing.
And then going Cup, we'll about 2 or 3 more minutes. We'll cut it. Ricky Stenhouse.
Hang on, real quick. Give me 1 second.
Go ahead.
Hang on.
Robbie, what are you doing? Yeah, but did you really fucking? You did that, you jackass. I love you, but you're a jackass.
Sorry about that.
All good. News, and I'm sure everybody's probably already heard. Ricky Stenhouse signs an extension with JTG Racing. Ricky, I feel like racing for Roush Fenway. I believe that was a growing up and a maturing for Ricky Stenhouse. For Roush Fenway, he's come a long way driving this 47 car. He won the Daytona 500 last year. Ricky's always one of these ones. It's a plate and a dirt racer. You never leave him out on those types of tracks. Kansas this weekend, just because he's coming off a high of some pretty decent finishes, I wouldn't expect any less for Ricky Stenhouse to be up there on that top line, fighting for, a top 3, top 5, maybe even a win.
Yeah, you never know with Ricky, and Ricky lays it all out there on the line every weekend. We've seen him make some great moves on the racetracks, and we've seen him make some maybe not so great moves that causes some chaos. But either way, he shows a lot of determination. I'm not surprised at all that he got was it a 3-year contract extension?
Yes.
Not surprised at all with the extension. He is consistently doing well enough to where I don't know who they would even move on from if they did, decide to move on from Ricky. Like who's available, So, yeah, not surprised. Congratulations to Ricky if you're listening, and that's going to be fun for him for the next few years.
Oh yeah. All right, we'll get our predictions out of the way. So trucks. I know we talked about Corey being the more dominant one. I'm sure that'd probably be your pick. Honestly, I'm probably going to have to go with Grant Enfinger this weekend. We don't talk about him much, and this whole season, man, he's been very quiet, laid back, back there getting some good runs, some good finishes. He always runs well at Kansas, so my truck pick for this weekend, I think Grant Enfinger in the 9 truck gets it done.
Grant's a great choice. Of course, we've got to keep saying Corey Heim's name. There's no reason not to. Of course, he's in a Toyota, so Toyota, Kansas. What are you gonna do? Christian Eckes, I don't think we've mentioned him once this entire show. He's
No,
racing
with
with
the win at Bristol, and where was the other win? He has two.
Martinsville.
Martinsville. I think that team, Eckes, they figured out something on the short tracks because they ran really well at Phoenix too.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Christian Eckes, he's going to be one of those ones, Chevrolet up there too. Shoo!
Yep. Truck race is going to be fun. What time is that tomorrow?
8:00.
8:00.
As far as our I'm gonna make a big swing on our cut predictions.
Okay.
He's been bringing some speed to the racetracks. He's been running really well. My win for this weekend, I'm gonna have to go with Noah Gragson. Noah gets his first win this weekend.
Noah Gragson in the Stewart Haas number 10 dark horse.
Mm-hmm. I
What's
believe old Wendy's boy gets his first win here at Kansas this weekend.
Well, what's interesting is when I was writing my notes before the show started, the very last one here at the bottom, dark horse, pun intended. He's racing the Ford Mustang dark horse. Noah Gragson, actually written down right here in my book. So I love that you said it. I don't know if he gets it done this weekend with it being a Toyota dominant track. I can't. I'm not going to bet against Toyota. Man, it pains me to say it, but Denny might get another win this week, and he is racing with a different kind of confidence this season. It's
scary once you give a driver like Denny Hamlin this confidence. Man, he will just continue to go to the racetrack every weekend and continue to rattle off poles, rattle off good speed, rattle off wins, and it's insane. It's like Kyle Busch. Denny Hamlin is one of those drivers. Martin Truex Jr., you give him that kind of confidence. Martin can rattle off a win. Almost had a win at Bristol. I believe Truex hasn't won it yet this season.
He has not won.
I would expect no less from Martin Truex Jr. this weekend. They've been so close and so fast.
And to get back on Denny, people need to, if you're not paying attention, Denny Hamlin is not the same Denny Hamlin that he was in 2023, 2022. He is winning races and he's smiling at all of y'all booing at the same exact time.
He eats it up.
He loves hearing it. So by all means, keep doing it. But if you just want to fuel his fire, that guy is on a different mission this year.
See, and I can't stand Denny Hamlin, but it's for the same reason that I believe people can't stand Kyle Busch.
Right.
The attitude, the ego, but he has the drive to be able to back it up. Just like Bristol a couple years ago, man. And Kyle eats it up even to this day. All those people booing at his name, and he was like, if you love you some Rowdy, let me hear you go boo.
Let me hear you boo, and they didn't know what to do.
No, and they were all like, boo, what? Wait, what? And I'm like, man, this is the whole reason I love Kyle, but I'm sure that's why Denny Hamlin fans love Denny. Outside the racetrack, I've met Denny Hamlin, autograph sessions. He's another down-to-earth human being. Awesome. Now, if I was out on the racetrack with him, if it came down to him and my grandmother putting either one of them in the wall for a 500, I'd probably put Denny in the wall. I mean,
it is what it is, right?
It is.
Now that I've brought up Denny Hamlin, I'm gonna have to go with my actual pick. I wanted to bring up Denny because I think he is very capable of winning this race. My actual pick is going to go to the 45 and Tyler Reddick and then boys at 2311. It's hard to argue what 2311 is putting out on the track at Kansas every single year. It doesn't matter the situation. It doesn't matter the driver.
And I feel like maybe it might just be Tyler at this racetrack too. He has one win. And if you look back at his last year at RCR, had a fast number 8 Camaro.
Yep.
The only reason he ended his day is because he got tight right off the 2 and broke a toe link.
And he won Texas that 1.5 miles in 2022 at RCR also. So, he's really good at these intermediate tracks, and I would not be surprised to see him lift another trophy. I think that would make 2 out of 3 weeks.
And if I'm not mistaken, Michael Jordan will actually be at the race this weekend, so maybe Michael's starting to bring him good luck.
You know, and Michael's got more time on his hands ever since selling his majority stake in the Charlotte Hornets here this past fall. I think.
Yeah. So hopefully we might see a little more of Michael at the racetrack. Not that you're going to get anywhere fucking close, but
no, it's hard to get close to him, but it's definitely it's a surreal moment when you walk by him. You know, kind of walk shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, because you're like, oh my god, that's Michael Jordan.
Right. It's a kind of a surreal moment, you know. And then just like we were saying with Denny, Michael was just chilling and laughing and enjoying the racetrack just like anybody else would. It was almost like it wasn't Michael Jordan, like the way it felt, you know.
Yeah,
so,
the way that we know him.
right.
But man, it's been an hour and 10 minutes. I tell you, we always get on here and get to talking about some of the best stuff and some of the most important topics about racing that I don't feel like are talked about enough.
Right.
I feel like the topics that we talk about, the ones that necessarily need to be addressed.
Right.
You know, getting out there. Hopefully NASCAR hears it. You know, hopefully NASCAR hears enough about the tires. And just adding a little quick thing, I feel like we need another a better rotor package. The last 2 years we've had the next gen car at Gateway, and I know I'm going a little further out in the schedule. We've had nothing but brake problems. Rotors blowing. Noah Gregson almost got sent to the hospital because of a nosedive because of a rotor problem.
Right.
Bubba Wallace ended up doing the same thing. Of course, Bubba was able to put it softly into the wall.
Right.
But issues like that, fans, get out there, post your opinions on social media. Fuck what everybody else has got to say. Let NASCAR know what you guys want. You guys are the voice of the sport. Just because we have all these drivers and advocates and shit that go out and talk on the big shows and the big radio stations about the teams and the sport, us as fans is what is how these guys are able to bring these race cars to the racetrack.
Right.
We pay for the tickets to keep, and that keeps the racetrack and brings attendance back in for more races. Us buying merch, hats, cars, shirts, lanyards, all that shit for the race team, that gives them the money to be able to bring their stuff to the racetrack and be able to compete every weekend. Right. So it may not feel like it, but as a fan, your opinion matters. Without your opinion, NASCAR has no fucking direction. They have no idea what direction to go.
Right. And can we work on doing it constructively? Like, I know a lot of people have the ability of constructively expressing their feelings or their likes or their dislikes. And sometimes it just comes off borderline bitchy and petty. And that's why a lot of it probably isn't taken very seriously, because you can't present it in a progressive manner. I guess it would be the best way to explain it. You don't have to go in attacking NASCAR saying, oh, NAPCAR this and NASCAR that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not beneficial to anyone, not you or the people.
Or your driver, for that matter.
Right. Like, exactly. So
if it's not benefiting your driver to help him get into victory lane, or these other guys were the other drivers, you know, and everybody else, you know, get out there, be constructive. Don't just be out there and be like, well, way to go, NASCAR. You fucked the fucking pooch on this one, and go on into a bitchy. Get on, start a podcast, start a fucking blog.
Right.
You know, put it out there. Fuck, for all you fucking younger people, I'm 30 years old. The TikTok, whatever the hell you guys are doing these days. I never thought I'd hear myself say that, whatever the fucking young people are doing these days. But TikTok, get on some sort of form of social media. Put your opinion out there. Have conversations. Be civil about it, please.
Right.
That's what makes the sport great. All of us are able to get along, man. Just be civil about it. Be constructive. Let NASCAR and these race teams know how you feel about certain things.
Right.
I know we're not going to get the 5 lug nuts back, or, you know, stuff that we really just crave from the last car that we don't care about this one, but the stuff that makes the racing great. Put it out there. Put your opinion out there. You're the ones that put money into these race cars and these people's paychecks.
Right. I'm all about generating conversation online with people. I love talking to people I disagree with, because it helps me to understand where their mindset is. if I understand what makes you angry about this, that's going to help me in the long run be like, I don't want to have an opinion on something that some people might dislike. That's not going to be beneficial to anyone. So it helps when you're able to constructively exchange uh, uh, one disagreements, and even the people that do agree, just help those that disagree
Be
under,
that one
understand
from
each
the
other better.
outside looking in.
Right.
Um, NASCAR, everybody that's involved with NASCAR is getting information from everything going on inside the sport. Nobody's going to the fans saying, "Hey, would you guys like to see this?" Or, "Hey, what changes would you guys like to see made to the racetrack or the cars or what have you?" Like, it's not that hard, guys.
Yep.
It's really not.
And it would be a lot easier to enjoy the sport as a whole when we finally start getting some of the, I guess our whole point of discussing this is to help spread the conversation of people just kind of toning it down on so much hate towards NASCAR. Like it's almost like some people want it to fail, but they're still watching and they're still contributing online and on social media every week. It's like it doesn't make any sense with how y'all are approaching it.
People feel like, and to me, I don't know how many of the comments, the same comment that I see all the time, every weekend after the race, people bitching. If you think you can do better, go put in an application.
Yeah.
If you think you can put that 23 in victory lane, if you feel like you can put the 17 in victory, if you feel like you want to be a car chief or a crew chief and make your team better, go put a damn application in. Quit bitching. Do something to change it.
Right, exactly. It's in your control. If you want something that bad, that's all on you. Because a lot of these problems people complain about, I said it earlier, it's a you problem. It's not a NASCAR problem. It's not your race team's problem. It's just you complaining. And so, take it for what it's worth.
Take the advice that you want, take it at face value, leave the rest, and go on about your day.
Right, exactly. Because at the end of the day, there are still a ton of fans that enjoy the sport. They enjoy it thoroughly. They have their likes and their dislikes, but they're not trying to tear NASCAR down from the inside, which is what I see a lot of social media stuff.
Yeah, everybody's like they're trying to destroy NASCAR from the inside, and I'm like, they're
It's
trying
so
to be
strange.
successful and they're trying to bring in revenue and money. Why destroy themselves? Like,
Right,
people are ignorant, but that's for another podcast. Ain't that
right.
right, Don?
I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, yes, sir. Well, man, it's an hour and 17 minutes talking about racing. Every time we get on here, I know we go over maybe just a hair,
Nah.
but I enjoy talking about it. I'm sure our
Yes, sir.
fans, they're the new information they can get, um, just in the different opinions, man. Not knowing, and maybe those people, if you guys are listening and new to motor racing in general, get out there, get some information. Um, I still have a bunch of people family, friends that are, how do you watch a sport where all they do is go, oh, it's another left turn. Get into the sport, sit down and watch it, or buy a ticket, bro. Go out there, listen to the radios, or buy the fucking pad that's got all these details on it, telling you fucking tire pressure. There's so much shit that goes into racing other than turning to the left and hitting the gas pedal.
And there's also, I know people love binge watching YouTube videos. Get on YouTube and look up what NASCAR is about. I've seen so many videos of people that took time to actually break down some of the sport so that it's not just coming off as drivers going out there and turning left. They're actually breaking down a lot of the radio communication. They're breaking down
People think NASCAR is dumb, but NASCAR is one of those sports that you have to dumb down because
yeah,
looking from the outside in, not knowing what's going on, that's what people see is just a bunch of cars going in and turning left and trying to pass each other.
right.
So get out there, go to the races, form your own opinion, watch, let NASCAR and social media know what you guys think. Put your voice out there, let it be heard.
And we're still working on getting our Twitter more up to date with everything. That's coming soon. I've been doing a little bit of practicing with that. So we're going to start taking a lot of your guys who are listening and new listeners any kind of questions y'all have, we would love to discuss. We just got to get a little bit more going with our Twitter, and we'll be right on top of it.
Yeah, questions, topics, comments that you guys made, we'll talk about on the show. Certain topics, get into detail about it, answer questions from 3 different point of views. We don't always all see the same thing through the same window. Right. So, I mean, me and you, Don, the separate conversations we've had, you've got different views on different things, and I do too. But that's what you said, the beauty of it. Right. Understanding why this person doesn't, understanding the way that they feel and why they do.
Understanding that,
and not bashing somebody else because they're not feeling the way that you do.
Understanding that another human being grew up in a completely different world, even though we're in the same country, a completely different world than you. As much as a lot of America can be the same, we still grew up completely different lives, completely different backgrounds. Other than our skin color being the same, that's the most minor detail. Like, we are so different in so many ways. And I loved listening to you talk about, some of the things that we've discussed in private, because it's important to learn about the people you disagree with, because it's really going to open your mind. It's really going to change the way you see things and people if you just kind of give it a chance.
It sure does. And it's not necessarily directed at politics for all you people, for the left wing and the right wing extremists, Trump, Biden supporters, whatever. No. I mean, I know who I voted for and who I'm going to vote for in November. It's nobody else's business. Vote who you vote for. Right. But that's the same thing, going to the voting thing. You guys bitch about who's in the country and who's running the country. Same thing with NASCAR. Don't know nothing about it. Go down, do some research, get your ass to the courthouse and go vote.
Yep.
Same thing. It's that simple, man. It literally takes less energy to make a difference than it does to probably go take a shit. I'm telling you.
Right. And it's worth it in the long run.
Get to know your neighbor. Get to know that person across the street that, may seem a little off. They may not be having a good day.
Right.
And they may be having their own issues. And who knows? I've had neighbors approach me because I've had conversations, or they've overheard pieces of conversations, of course, that not gone. They thought it went a different direction than what it did.
Right.
But get to know your neighbors. Talk to people. Form your own fucking opinions. Get off the social media. Turn off the fucking TV. Absolutely turn off the fucking TV. Human beings are human beings, no matter what they believe.
Right. Well said.
Man. And that goes for you Chase Elliott fans. I mean,
hey, I saw Chase Elliott on Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast. Shout out to Kevin Harvick in that show. That thing seems to be taking off really well, and
it really does.
That's kind of stuff. That's the kind of goals we're trying to reach, man. We want to be a voice for NASCAR. We want people to come in and listen just the same way you tuned into Dale Jr.'s download, and hope we add a fan's perspective with a lot of knowledge, as Dale Jr. adds a lot of race perspective and history perspective. So, those are the goals we're trying to reach.
Find out in that interview with Dale Jr. that Chase Elliott was afraid to call Rick Hendrick after he broke his leg.
Right. I mean, wouldn't you be? You got to tell your boss you're going to be out a couple months, And
it's cool, guys. You watch. If you guys don't watch it, go watch the Dale Jr. download. And Dirty Mo Media, Stacking Pennies. I can't remember Denny's podcast.
His is Actions Detrimental, and Dirty Mo is Door Bumper Clear.
Okay, and because I know it's Denny Hamlin and Dale Jr. on the Dirty Mo, I think.
Right, and I think the branch off is Actions Detrimental for Denny's, and Door Bumper Clear is for Teddy and all those guys.
All you new fans, and this is another one, Stacking Pennies is Corey LaJoy, his podcast. If you guys don't know a lot about the sport, go listen to Stacking Pennies. Corey gets into detail about a bunch of stuff, and you can learn so much about a race car and what goes on in a race in like 10 seconds rather than having to sit through 500 laps.
Right.
Watch Corey LaJoy's or listen, man, and just learn a lot.
Yeah, I actually listened to his right around 4:00 earlier today, and he was actually breaking down the number of G's he was experiencing in real time during his Talladega wreck at the end of that race. He was explaining how it would go down to like 12 G's at some points, and then all the way at the very last flip where his car rolled over and finally landed on its wheels. He said that final slam to the ground was 60 G's that the inside of the car felt. Like that was such cool information, and people don't really realize or understand how hard these guys are taking these hits, rolling around inside these cars.
It doesn't look that bad when people are turning across the field and just nosediving and fucking dropping a window net and getting out. Like these hits hurt. Look at Eric Jones. This is perfect example. Compression fracture in his spine. That hit they are at Talladega. Man, it was a good lick, but it really didn't look that bad.
Right.
But the way his body compressed, I mean, they don't always look that bad either. Dale Earnhardt's didn't look that bad, and look what happened.
Right.
We lost Dale. So these guys get out here and risk their lives every time they fucking start that car.
Right.
Every time. Look at Michael McDowell's qualifying Texas crash in 2008.
Such a brutal hit.
You guys go Google that. Michael McDowell qualifying crash 2008 Texas. And see just what kind of hits and what kind of stuff these drivers go through. Go watch Kyle Busch's 2015 accident at Daytona. Yes, getting hit from the side and hitting not a safer barrier, a concrete wall nose first at 180 miles an hour. And broken ankle, broken foot, had to be helped out of the race car, couldn't walk, missed the first 11 races of the season. Okay, like, another one, if you guys really want to see the crazy shit that happens, Ryan Newman, Daytona 2020. We were just talking about Corey LaJoie. Corey was involved in that wreck. He's the one that hit Ryan in the door.
Right.
But Corey is that kind of guy. The cool part about that, as soon as he got out of the car, man, dropped that window net and got out and hit his knees praying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may not be for everybody. But some of these hits, man, some of these, look at Bubba Wallace for, I can't remember what year it was, 2017, 2018, his Pocono crash.
Yep.
Bubba Wallace Pocono crash, lost all front brakes going into turn one, skipped across the grass and almost no-dove the wall.
And it took him a while to put that window net down. I was watching that race live, and I was just like, man, that dude still hasn't put the window net down. Like, that got scary in a hurry. Especially at the trajectory that he actually got the wall and with zero brakes. And then you add sliding across the grass, because that doesn't slow you down. That speeds you up. Like that less.
Because all you're doing is skipping.
Right. You're not even slowing down. And so he shot back up across the track, man. That was a scary wreck. And then we didn't even bring up Ryan Preece's Daytona wreck last year.
Lord, no. Or Jamie McMurray's Talladega flip down the backstretch.
Right.
Just all these. Just get on NASCAR. Get on YouTube and look up NASCAR's scariest wrecks. I mean, you have the one with Joey Logano barrel rolling down the front stretch at Dover.
Yeah.
That was scary. The wreck that just happened a couple years at Texas, the All-Star race where Ross Chastain launched himself off the back of the 18 car.
Yeah, that was
that could have probably seriously hurt or injured or killed Kyle.
Yeah, that car cuts across at the wrong angle. There's no telling how much of that side of that car gets ripped off. That's
and there was a good bit of that side of that 18 car that went with that one car.
Right.
Kyle said that he could stick his hand through the door and pretty much almost touch the racetrack.
Wow.
So I'm like, I mean, to come that close. And then you had Denny Hamlin at Indianapolis a couple years ago.
Yeah,
when he had that flat, and ran the wall, caught fire. I mean, that was a hard hit. You had the one at Indianapolis with Brad Kay when he ended up on top of the tire barrier.
Right.
These are all scary hits. These drivers aren't going out, and it's not driving Miss Daisy. Some of you people think 180 miles ain't shit. Well, I mean, it ain't until that 3,600-pound race car decides to turn right on you.
Right. Right at a steel wall.
I mean, even Blaney at Daytona this past year, when he nose-dove the wall, he even said that hurt. Like, he had to take a couple minutes because it knocked the wind out of him. Like, he was having to catch his breath.
Right.
And I'm like, you guys, they don't – all those G's being strapped in with a headrest right here, and you're in a wreck this far, and you're just like this at the mercy of whatever's going on.
Whatever hits
and you're
you.
constantly being chunked around.
Right.
And I'm surprised a lot of those drivers don't have whiplash, even with the Hans device.
Well, the good thing is with that Hans device, it holds their shoulders in place too, so it reduces all of that neck movement, and so it all moves together. I think that was one of the biggest benefactors was the fact that it keeps all of this moving together. So
but still, even the jerking. I mean, you see some of these wrecks, and they're still like,
yeah, the heads are still bouncing around. It's
and I'm like, I still don't see how they're not sore. I mean, Eric Jones, the fact that he's at the racetrack, not in the race car.
Yeah,
But he's at the and he's walking around with no help, no brace that we could see on. A compression fracture. I'm sorry, but I'd have been a little bitch. I'd have been like, I ain't coming back for like 4 weeks, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the beach for the weekend.
Yeah, I'm gonna go soak and relax. I mean, it probably wouldn't have scared me out of the race car. I just had this conversation with a buddy of mine 2 or 3 days ago. After, if I'd have been Ryan Newman in the 2020 crash, unless my daughter absolutely looked at me in the eyes and said, "Daddy, don't get back in the race car," my ass probably would have been back in that race car 6 races later.
Right.
This is these guys' livelihood. This is all they know.
Right.
They put their lives on the line every time they get behind the wheel to be able to put on a show and be able to entertain all of us fans.
Right.
And I think a lot more than half of the fan base takes that for granted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think myself, I caught myself guilty the night that Ryan crashed at Daytona, and I thought we had just watched him die.
Right.
That was I think that was the night that truly woke me up to, oh shit, like this is happening.
This is real.
Yeah. And so after that, I mean, I quit taking it. Like every time somebody get in a wreck after that, I'm like, where's the winner at? Are they okay?
Right.
Like, it's one of those things, you see something major like that happen to somebody in the sport, and then every little small thing, it's humbling even for a non-driver.
Yep, absolutely. And I think for people that know the sport as well as we do, it hits a little bit harder because we have an understanding of how precious it actually is. There's a reason that the wife and kids are the last people they kiss and hug before they get in the race car. They're not just in the motorhome chilling, waiting for daddy to finish work. You know, like
no, most of them are there stressing.
Right.
I mean, and then you guys have these teams, car chiefs, crew chiefs, spotters. These guys spend 38 weeks a year on the road together, and they work through the shop every week up until race time.
Right. I think
so they're all these families. And when you have a wreck like Ryan's and you have the spotter, crew chief, I mean, everybody going, okay, talk to me when you can, bud. Yeah. You all right? Talk to me when you can.
Yep.
No response. And it's scary. Definitely if you're a new fan. Austin Dillon's 2015 Daytona crash.
Yeah.
Up and over 3 lanes of cars into the catch fence, and the only thing that was left was the cab of the car, the engine compartment, and the trunk. Everything was gone.
Everything was ripped off of that car.
And you can only imagine going 180 miles to almost a complete fucking stop in just like that.
I don't know how his body did that.
I don't know how he didn't have a compression fractures or how everything just didn't, like his ribs and everything didn't just snap.
Right. That amount of force stopping, it didn't seem real.
And of course the silly person that Austin is, getting out of the car, looking at the fans going,
just wave. Yep.
Just waving. I'm all right. And that's the biggest, the best part about seeing a wreck like that is those guys being able to climb out of the race car. And some of these wrecks are scary. I mean, look at Steve Parks and Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Pocono back in the day.
Ran to him.
Yeah, they had fans jumping the barrier there to get to Junior and Steve Parks. Like, that was a bad wreck, and they both climbed from that and laughed about it 5 minutes later.
Right. But Dale thought something seriously could have happened to Steve at that moment. The way he was rolling and tumbling and the way they took that hit on the wall, it looked bad.
And Adam Petty, guys, like, go back. Freak shit happens. Like, the throttle hung during a testing session, and he nose dove the wall at Pocono, and it killed him.
Right.
The sport's not. They make it as safe as they can, but it's not. You're not invincible in that race car.
Right.
Shit can go south, and faster than what you can. Shit will go south, and before you can even realize what fucking happens, you're already in the back of an ambulance.
Yep.
So I mean, it's stuff happened.
Remembering what happened.
Yeah, I mean, look at Joey Logano. I know he was bitching about the aero package and stuff at the super speedways, which rightfully so, ending up upside down. And even Bubba Wallace, that B post he caught, it crushed part of Bubba Wallace's car too.
Right.
Brendan Gaughan,
he said he struggled getting his window net unlatched because of where it crushed.
Yep.
It bent it in place.
So what? And Brendan Gaughan, same place, same spot. To be completely honest, up and over on four wheels across the lane of traffic all the way back onto all fours.
What a wicked wreck that was! I mean, he literally did a barrel roll, one single kind of pirouette in the air, and then
Matt Crafton several years ago at Daytona,
doing
that barrel roll all the way across the inside lane to the wall and landing on his wheels.
Yep.
Christopher Bell had that wild ride at Daytona where he slid and rolled a couple times.
Yeah.
I was at the Xfinity race before the weekend of the 2022 Daytona 500 when Mike Schneider ate the fence on the backstretch.
Yeah.
I was there sitting in the second tier section at Daytona with the entrance of pit road, and all we could see was smoke and then just giant fireball.
Yeah.
And it was scary from a fan's perspective, especially when you're there. And I'm kind of glad we were supposed to go to the 2020 Daytona 500. Something happened and we weren't able to go, and that was the night that Ryan almost died.
Right.
So
that was such a scary hit, the way his car whipped around back driver's side right at the same time Corey's coming full throttle through the tri-oval. Like that was wicked, man.
I mean, and I know they're going that fast, but the way that Ryan, it was a Ryan and Ryan show that night, but the way that Blaney, when he threw that block, it just looked like another turn, like he got him in the left. It was just another turn, but he hit so hard that the hole from the center all the way to the rear just came up off the ground, caught air, and when he came back down on his roof, Corey LaJoie just hit him right there in the door.
Man, I mean, at a more 90-degree angle, I don't think you could get, and that was wicked, man.
It was scary. But man, we gone almost an hour and 40 minutes. I know you probably got stuff. Man, I hear you. So we're gonna have, let's see, Grant Enfinger is our pick on Truck Series, and you're going Corey Heim.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Corey on the trucks.
And then Cup, I'm definitely gonna have to say Noah Gragson, and if not, Ryan Preece. I know they're both Stuart Haas and both Fords, but Ryan and Noah have shown tremendous speed these last couple weeks. I wouldn't show anything different. Tyler Reddick, your pick. Definitely can't count him out in the whole 2311 camp.
Right, and then we've got the truck race at Truck Race Day starts at 7 p.m. tomorrow night, Saturday. Truck race starts at 8 p.m. The weather's supposed to be rainy during the day, but I think it's supposed to clear up in the evening.
Which just makes it for a green racetrack, which means we know it's going to be one hell of a race.
It's going to be exciting, so get your popcorn for sure. Cup practice, that's 9 a.m. Cup race day. Cup actually qualifies 5 p.m. Saturday, so tune into Fox for that because qualifying is always entertaining for me. I know some of y'all might enjoy it too.
Well, there might be some more rubber laid down from between qualifying and the truck race.
Right. So there will definitely be that, and then of course the Cup race starts at 3 p.m. and I do believe those times are Eastern.
Yes.
So we should be 2 p.m. Central for everybody this way.
But man, it's been awesome talking. We'll see what kind of action we get this weekend.
Looking
guys.
forward to it.
Yes, sir. This is Kevin. This is Don, Motor Racing Podcast. You guys have a good night.
Y'all be safe. Enjoy the race weekend.